How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In the last video you would have saw we got the engine bay sprayed with high build primer. Today's plan is to get the front rad support sprayed black. So I've already got the rad support sanded down. It's basically prepped and ready to spray. But before we get into any painting, we're gonna have to get some seam sealing done. So here's where we're at so far. So like I said, I've already gone ahead and got all the sanding done in here. So now we got to seam seal before we can paint. So if we look under here, you can see where all my ugly welds are. Those are all the holes that I filled in for shaving the top. So I want to cover all of those with seam seal just to make sure that no moisture is going to get to them and they're going to be a smooth surface that we can paint. And then a couple other areas we got to seam seal in here. So this is where I stitch welded the frame. So I want to cover these welds as well. So I'm going to seam seal along here. Oh, there's a couple other areas here where there was some kind of a tab here. I don't remember exactly what this was, but I ended up grinding it down and we're kind of left with this ugliness here. So I'm going to seam seal that as well. I just feel like a lot of moisture could get trapped in here. So I want to seal that off. It doesn't have to look too pretty because it's just going to be flat. Same with underneath here. I don't think anyone's ever going to see under there. The only ones that I'm really worried about is the frame rails inside because they're going to be visible and I really want to get these seams as smooth as possible. So those are going to take a bit of work. So here's what I'm all going to be using. So the seam seal itself is a 3M gray seal. This is an automotive grade seam seal. This stuff I'm able to get from work. It's about 30 bucks a tube, so it's pretty expensive, but it's really good quality stuff, and it's paintable within 30 minutes. I was having a hard time with this stuff when I seam sealed in my wheel wells, but I think I have a good idea on how I can get this stuff to look a bit better today. So we're gonna try it and see what happens. I got a couple tools here that I might end up using for smoothing it out. I may end up just using some soap water and my finger just to smooth it out. We'll kind of see how everything goes, but I do have these tools just in case. I'm going to use the masking tape to cover the edges that I don't want to get seam seal on, and this is going to help me get a nice clean line, and then it's not going to spread out too far. So I can smooth it out to the tape and then peel the tape off, and it'll give me a nice clean line. I'm going to get the tube loaded up into the applicator gun. I already got everything cleaned off in the engine bay, so we're basically ready to start applying this stuff. So let's get to it. Alright guys, so I got the applicator gun ready. I got the area taped off where I'm going to be seam sealing. I realized I probably didn't have to tape off this area because it's not going to be seen anyway, but I just kind of want to use this as a trial just to make sure that this is going to work. So I figured this would probably be the best place to try it out and just to practice with it and see if I can get a nice clean line here. And if it works here, then I know it'll work on the inside. So I'm just going to apply some seam seal here, smooth it out real quick, and we'll see how it looks. Alright, so I wasn't too happy when I pulled the tape off. The results weren't that good. So I ended up trying to smooth it out without the tape on there. It's not as smooth as I want it to be, but I'm going to leave this one the way it is. I think the more I play with it, the worse I'm going to make it look. So I think what I'm going to do on this side's going to be a little different because I have a bit of a crack here that I want to fill in. So I'm probably going to want this whole area to be covered rather than just the seam in here. I'll try and make it a bit thinner around the edges, and then that way it doesn't have such a thick line. Extra thick! I just got to keep practicing with this stuff. The more I use it, I think the better I'll get. But I really want to make sure that I can get this stuff looking nice before I do the actual engine bay, because I'm going to have to seam seal all along here yet, and that's going to be very visible. So I want to make sure I can get this stuff looking good before I tackle that. Alright, this one I'm a lot happier with. So I'm going to pull this tape off right now and we'll see how it actually looks, but yeah, that's much better already. So now we don't have such a thick tape line right here. On the other side it was way too thick over there, but this one, it has a nice feathered out edge to it, so I think it's gonna hide very nicely. So now I'm gonna move on to the welds under here. I'm just basically gonna glob the stuff in here and smooth it out as best I can. Doesn't have to look super pretty, just needs to seal. So I'm gonna quickly blast through this, and then we're gonna get to the scary part inside the engine bay. All right guys, well, these ended up looking about as ugly as a shaved gorilla, but definitely better than it was. So at least it'll seal, no moisture is gonna get in there. So I'm pretty happy with that. Now I've got my roll of tape here. I'm going to tape off the edges of both seams. This seam seal is actually pretty runny, so it is hard to make it look good. Every time I try to smooth it out or flatten it out, it ends up just spreading it. So I think the tape is gonna help quite a bit. I'm gonna get to taping this off. We'll get it seam sealed. Hopefully it goes well. Alright guys, well, my camera ended up dying last night, but here's where we're currently at. Apparently I need to charge this thing every once in a while. Anyway, got the seam seal done. It actually ended up turning out really good. So I got a nice clean line there where I had it taped off. Same on this side. So I'm pretty happy with it. I also ended up starting the masking process. So just taping off all the areas that I don't want to get any overspray on. So basically the top of the rad support is going to be the engine bay color, and then the rest of this is going to be blacked out. So I'm trying to tape off this edge here. Underneath here is going to be black, and then the whole front is going to be black, and then all this in here is going to be black. So I've taped a line here, so this is kind of where the cutoff is going to be between the engine bay color and the black. So I think this will look pretty good. Most of this will probably be hidden anyway by the headlight covering here, as well as I'm going to have all the turbo bits on this side. So most of that tape line is going to be covered anyway. But yeah, I'm just going to continue taping here. Plan is still to get it sprayed today. I do have to go to a Led Zeppelin concert tonight. No, not the real Led Zeppelin, unfortunately. But it's a tribute band in a small venue, so it should be a lot of fun. But I gotta get cracking on this if I want to get finished today. Alright guys, once again, it's not the prettiest masking job, but it's gonna get the job done. Instead of wasting a bunch more paper on masking the firewall and the windshield and all that, I just took my tarp, draped it over everything, so just about everything is protected now, I think. I'm gonna give this one more quick wipe down, just because with all the masking and stuff, I may have touched some areas accidentally, so I just want to make sure it's as clean as possible before I start spraying. So just like last time, I ended up using the Varsol as a degreaser, but this stuff does leave a bit of a film behind. So I'm going to finish with this stuff right here. This stuff acts as a degreaser as well, but it leaves no residue behind. And the soap water that I was using can leave quite a bit of a film behind. So if I don't clean that up, then none of the paint is going to stick very well to the areas that I used to smooth out the seam seal. So this should get rid of that just fine. And then we're about ready to start spraying. So today I'm going to be using the Spray Max 1K Black, and then I'm going to finish with the 2K Clear. So this will be my first time using this stuff, but rather than using my spray gun and getting overspray everywhere and getting the garage full of overspray again, I figured this would be the easiest route to go. I'm going to see how this stuff does. If I end up liking it, I might end up doing my engine bay this way too. Now the reason I'm considering going with rattle cans as opposed to using my spray gun to do the engine bay is mainly because there's quite a few tight spaces in the engine bay. So for instance, behind the strut towers, it is very tight behind there, and I was not able to get a proper coat of primer in there. So that's how I ended up getting a bunch of runs and stuff in there that I had to take care of. And then in some other areas it was very thin, in some areas it sprayed it on very thick. So I realized I'm not a professional either, so if I had more experience with the gun and spraying and that kind of stuff, I feel like I'd be able to get a better result with the spray gun. But because I don't have the experience and there's such tight spaces, I think spray cans might be a better way to go. So I just want to try all this stuff for right now. We'll get the front rad support done, and if it ends up working well, I might end up getting some color mixed in a spray can and do it that way as well. And another problem I had while spraying primer is this air hose gets in the way a lot. So especially when I'm trying to bring it into the engine bay, and then I'm trying to spray inside the engine bay, and then I'm jumping out of the engine bay. The hose actually came into contact with a few areas inside the bay as well, which left a big impression in there. So luckily that happened with the filler primer, so I will be able to sand it smooth again. But if that ends up happening while I'm laying a base coat or a clear coat, I'm gonna end up having to redo the whole thing. So I really don't want to risk doing that, and I think rattle cans might give me the best result based on my lack of experience with using a spray gun. But like always guys, drop me a comment below, let me know what you think on that subject. But I'm gonna get this rad support cleaned, and then we're gonna start spraying. Still got a few hours in the day, so we should be able to get this all finished. So let's get to it. All right guys, cleanup is done. I ended up setting up my fan again with the furnace filters on it. So I still have them doubled up just like I did when I sprayed primer. This actually did a really good job in clearing up the overspray in the garage. So I would say probably within a half hour after spraying, it was clean in here again. So that worked out really well. So I'm gonna do that again. I've also got the heat cranked in here. I've had it set to 20 degrees all day. Still not the ideal temperature for this paint. I don't know if it says on here, but I read the data sheet online and it said recommended between 18 and 24 degrees Celsius. I could get it up to about 15 in here. That's about as warm as I'm gonna get it, but I think it'll still work. So to start, I'm going to spray adhesion promoter on all the areas that I seam sealed. Just because I'm not going over this with a sealer primer, I'm going directly over the current primer that I have. So I just want to make sure the paint's going to stick to the seam seal. So once I spray the adhesion promoter, there's about a 10-minute window where I have to spray the base coat. So basically once I get started, I won't be able to stop. So I'm just going to set up the camera. Like last time when I sprayed the primer, the picture was a bit blurry because I ended up putting a bag over the camera just to protect it from overspray. I'm gonna do that again just to protect it. So basically I'm gonna set you guys up on the tripod. I'll get the camera rolling and we'll start spraying. So let's get to it. I'm stoked. Alright guys, it was a late one last night, but I got all the spraying done just in time for my Zeppelin concert, which was freaking amazing, by the way. So I'm pretty worn out today, but I want to spend some time out here and get everything unmasked. So this will be a real test to see how well I applied the primer and how well I prepped it, because I put tape over it now, and hopefully the tape lets go without removing any primer. That's what I'm most paranoid about right now. But I'm gonna get to it. We'll quickly get this unmasked and then we'll have a good look at it. Alright guys, overall I think this turned out incredible. I am super stoked about the results. Like, that gloss is insane. Now, I probably didn't have to do gloss on this because I used a high gloss black, but for extra durability I wanted to use that 2K clear, and I am so glad that I did, because the black was already glossy, but this just added so much more to it. Now, I kind of figured the paint would bleed through in some spots, so you can see right here, because the primer here is still so textured, the tape didn't seal 100%. So I was kind of anticipating that already. So it's not a big deal because the entire engine bay all needs to be block sanded yet. So any overspray is going to be taken care of. So that's not a big deal. Now that I have it unmasked, I can kind of show you what I was talking about before, where the air hose had made contact. So you can see here, if I get up close, this is where the air hose had come into contact with the top here. Made a nice little mark there. It also hit it right here. So I tried to add another coat of fill primer on top of this yet. Luckily it's high build primer, so I can block sand it out, but if something like that were to happen while I was spraying base coat or clear, I would end up having to redo it all. So I'm really leaning towards the Rattle can option, because this turned out so good. If I could get a result exactly like this in the engine bay with the color I'm using, I would be 100% satisfied. Like, I have zero complaints about this at all. And I just feel like if I use a spray gun, I'm not going to be as happy with the results just because of my lack of experience. But anyway guys, I think I'm going to end the video there. Huge progress was made in this one. I am stoked with the results. It just looks so clean, and just gives me that extra motivation I need to get the rest of the bay done. So at this point I'm going to be spending a lot of time block sanding, so I'm probably not going to show too much of that, if any. So I'm not sure when the next video is going to come out. It all depends on how long it takes me to block sand this, but I'm just going to go hard on it, try and get it block sanded, and then after that is going to be seam seal in the engine bay. Then we got primer, base, and clear, and then the bay is done. So we're getting pretty close, but I got a lot of sanding ahead of me yet. So yeah guys, if you like the video, you're stoked about the progress, give me a thumbs up, drop me a comment below. Like I said guys, I love to hear feedback from you guys. Any comments are appreciated. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, definitely consider doing so. Spring is coming and we got a lot of stuff planned for this year. We're gonna be doing some stuff that's a little different on the channel, so I'm pretty excited about it. Probably gonna be introducing some new cars to the channel, so if that kind of stuff interests you, definitely consider subscribing. We'll see you guys next time.